Hello, this is Paul Glumaz, veteran LaRouche activist, uh, coming to you on March 19th, 2019. And this is being brought to you by General Welfare Presents. Okay. Now, this episode, I want to discuss a profound earthquake that is going on internationally. It's very profound. It's centered around Italy. But it's not just in Italy. Okay? The Italian government is organizing for bringing all of Europe into the Belt and Road with China and the United States as well. The Italian government. And to make sure about that, the individual who's the Undersecretary of Economic Development, Michele Michele Garacci, spoke at a conference sponsored by LaRouche, which was subsequently attacked by the Avvenire publication, which is a newspaper of the Vatican, of the Catholic newspaper, for being associated with LaRouche. This is the same Vatican which 20 years ago brought LaRouche in to teach the cardinals and the bishops about economics. So this tells you something very strange has happened in the Vatican. But that's not the subject of this discussion. What the subject of this discussion is that the president of China will arrive Friday, the 22nd of March, and will sign with the Prime Minister of Italy, Giuseppe Conte, the memorandum of understanding that brings China and that brings Italy officially into the Belt and Road. Now, Italy is not just an underdeveloped country, it's a developed country. The northern part of Italy is extremely industrialized with a heavy machine tool sector. And the combination of what the Chinese are going to do and what the Italians are going to do is going to be explosive. And one of the major recipients of this partnership that's emerging will be Africa. It is Italy and China which are teaming up to begin the preparations for building the largest water project in all of human history. It's called Transaqua. It's the transfer of the water from the Congo basin up north into Lake Chad, with massive electricity and a reforestation and ending desertification, reversing desertification, and creating the water basis for incredible economic development of Africa, incredible development of Africa. And this is where the future surplus that will sustain the human race is going to come from. It's going to come from transforming Africa into one of the largest breadbaskets of the world, one of the largest industrial manufacturing areas of the world. Okay, this is what the Chinese envision the Belt and Road will do for Africa. But in order to do that, Europe has to play a part. Europe can't be languishing in zero development, zero birth rate, zero economic future. The European Union constraints notwithstanding, only this kind of development will pull the southern European countries out of the doldrums and actually invigorate all of Europe. And the ports, but when you build a railway infrastructure, you also got to build the ports, because when you build the railway infrastructure, you increase the potential productivity, but you also have to develop the ports in order for the productivity to find its way out and backing in. So this is huge. Now, what most people don't realize is that of all the European leaders, the Italian Prime Minister is on the best terms with Donald Trump. And he likes him better than all the other leaders, because Donald Trump is not a fan of the European Union, and neither is Giuseppe Conte, neither is the current government of Italy. So there is a relatively unspoken, shall we say, resonance. Let's use the term resonance. Unspoken resonance between what Italy is doing and Donald Trump is doing. Now, it is quite the case, and most likely the case, that the same problem exists for the United States. The United States is not developing. The United States is not replacing its infrastructure. The United States is not building a new platform of infrastructure that needs to be built on a massive scale. The United States isn't building high-speed rail. The United States isn't building the water projects required. The United States isn't building the connectivity that's required. The United States isn't building the inland canals, and it isn't building the ports that it has to build. What has emerged and Trump made infrastructure development one of the major campaign issues, and we're more than 2 years into his administration, and nothing has really been done because the financing isn't really possible in the way that it's being run. Now you have two basic plans for infrastructure development, and then you had Trump's failed infrastructure development fund, which was not going to work. It was a private-public partnership. It wasn't going to work, and you have the Green New Deal infrastructure, which they say is FDR, the green FDR, and that is a disaster because all of the infrastructure is going to go into replacing fossil fuels with much less efficient energy production, wind, solar, and what have you. You know, every time you build a solar and windmill, you gotta have a backup natural gas to back it up because it doesn't always work. Otherwise, you're going to have massive blackouts. So the whole thing is a scam. So you got all these people going for the Green New Deal, and that's a total disaster. And then you have the middle of the road Democrats and their Republican bipartisan people that want infrastructure, and what they want to do is have a national gasoline tax of 25 cents a gallon increase, and then put that money into a fund to do infrastructure. And the fund is like, it's sort of pay as you go kind of thing, and it's like, you know, basic infrastructure that's not really going to develop much. And after 10 years, they've got $500 billion worth of infrastructure, and that's not what you need. You need trillions of dollars worth of infrastructure. You need to create the credit for trillions of dollars of infrastructure. You need to do huge infrastructure projects. You need to, you know, do the kind of stuff that China's doing right now. And we're not doing it. So, however, at this point, given the problems of Congress, given the problems of the psychotic greenies, given the problems of rapacious financial conglomerates and transnational entities that want to get their fingers on the funds that are going to be used for infrastructure development, right now, the best bet for the United States, and this is going to make the neocons scream when I say this, is to partner with China. Because China is sitting with $1 trillion to $2 trillion worth of U.S. currency reserves. That could be immediately deployed internally in the United States, converted into bonds for infrastructure. Either through a fund or through a national, create a national bank. However, which way you want to do it. Now, the question I'm asking is Trump's discussions with China. Is the discussion with China about that? Is this so-called trade deal more than just a trade deal? Is it also about something of this nature? And given Trump's resonant sympathies with the Italian government, and given the fact that Pence and the psychotic, Cheney clone in the vice presidency, the psychotic Bolton and the psychotic Pompeo, who's a total fool, by the way. The guy's a total fool, a total babbling fool. These guys are screaming that the new axis of evil is China and the Belt and Road. The very thing that's developing the world is the new evil that is going to, take us over and eat us for breakfast or something. And these guys have lost it. But you never hear Trump say anything like that. He says we gotta, we can compete, but, we gotta work with them too. So I'm wondering if Donald Trump is preparing something like that, preparing to bring China in to help develop the United States, which would be the effect of the United States joining the Belt and Road. And I suspect he is, because there is no other way at this point, unless you completely reorganize the U.S. financial system in the context of a financial collapse, or in the context of all these other countries doing the same thing and creating the credit internally to do this. Where are you going to get and putting the people to work to do this? You're not going to do it unless you have China working with you. So this is very interesting. And then U.S. companies can partner with China all over the world, put people to work in the United States, creating the products that are needed to develop Africa, Asia, Latin America, and so forth. That's ideal. That would be the most perfect thing. That would be the most perfect thing. But these cycles in his government have now regrouped around Dick Cheney and the clone of Dick Cheney, Michael Pence. They had this retreat in Sea Island, Georgia last week, where Dick Cheney was there and Mike Pence was the speaker. It was the Heritage Foundation. You all know about the Heritage Foundation. They believe in the magic of the marketplace, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And if you're on welfare and you can't survive, well, that's God's way of, taking care of, that's God, that's because you don't deserve to survive, that's, God's way of taking care of the worthless, So you shouldn't be getting welfare, you shouldn't be getting unemployment, and you shouldn't be getting any food stamps, because that's just encouraging you to be lazy. I mean, that's the mentality that these people have. And that let them sink or swim, and if you die, you die. That's your problem. If you're not a killer and you're killed, that's your problem. That's the mentality of these people. They're like religious about this. So anyhow, but Donald Trump isn't like that. So anyhow, they had their conclave, and then Dick Cheney came out publicly attacking Trump for not listening to his advisors. Well, who are his advisors? These assholes. These are the advisors, right? He's not listening. He isn't listening to it. But they're disrupting everything. They're disrupting the North Korea. They're disrupting everything. So Trump retweeted a tweet from this guy, William, I forgot his name, Craddock, and included in that a response to Craddock's tweet from Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard. And what this retweeted tweet is that it was the United Kingdom that was running the anti-Russia operation, the Russia operation, to bait the United States into a conflict with Russia, as in one manifestation of the Great Game. So the reference to the United Kingdom and the reference to the Great Game is a signal that it's understood by Trump that the British are at the core of this thing. And then Tulsi Gabbard's response was, it's this Russia thing, and the imbeciles that have been pushing it, which is creating a situation where Trump can't work with people that are not anti-Russia, because then he would be seen as pro-Russia. And this is bringing us close to nuclear war. So this is very significant. It's a tweet from Trump. It's a retweet from Trump, which is signaling that there's more to come. There's more to come. Now, going back to Italy, last week, the Schiller Institute, Italian equivalent, Movisol, had a conference on Italy and the Belt and Road in Milan. And in that conference, Michele Garacci spoke and Helga spoke. And what's going on is that after Italy, Xi Jinping will be going to France. And there is a serious discussion going on at every level of European bureaucracy, European whatever, about what should be the relationship of Europe as a whole and individual nations of Europe to China. And so the whole process of Europe starting to go into the Belt and Road as partners with China is in the process of percolating right now. And this is huge. This is huge. This is earth-shaking, and that's why you have such a freak out, and to the point of where they're trying to get the new president Bolsonaro to be of Brazil, to be a member of NATO, and to etc., and to go against Venezuela. Now, I want to mention a few things about the Venezuelan situation. This 35-year-old punk, Guaido, he lives in the richest part of Venezuela. The only reason he's not being arrested or anything, because nobody takes him seriously. He's been declared, the leader of Venezuela by so many countries, including the United States. He can't even lead his own servants, let alone lead Venezuela. Now, people don't understand that the Venezuelan government has made massive economic mistakes. They've screwed up royally. They've been under attack also by currency manipulation, black marketing, and sanctions at this point, and other things. But the government hasn't cracked down on the people. And the reason the government hasn't cracked down on the people is the way I see it is that people are the inflation is so high in the Venezuelan currency, they can't afford to eat. But the government, rather than saying, you're on your own, baby, that's the way, it's tough luck, it's the way it goes, they actually are providing the food to all those who can't afford to buy. But that means that no meat. It just means beans. It means rice. It means, oil. It means cooking oil and things like that. But so it's pretty much the Venezuelan population is pretty much now on a vegetarian diet, but they're surviving. So if the government is providing you with the food to survive, and the U.S. invades Venezuela, that means no food. Now, you got to understand what that means. It means you're not going to be in favor of some overthrow of your government if the conditions that have been created in your country are such that you are dependent on the government for food. So the government is in control not because they're doing that great of a job, but because the population, because they do have a food program. And the population is now in a situation where they're now under siege, and it's like being in a war where you have to ration everything. And once they get adjusted to that mentality, you're not going to overthrow Venezuela, this grouping. So now, what's the significance of this? You got Bolton and Pence and all these people out there screaming about overthrowing this government and the legitimate and a terrible Maduro government, and it ain't gonna go anywhere. Okay, and if the U.S. invades and destroys that place, it'll be all hell will break loose everywhere in Latin America because everyone knows what the score is. So Trump isn't going to let that happen. He's not going to give an order to invade. So these assholes are out there running a coup that ain't going to happen. And what does that make them look like in the rest of the world? They're pouncing around, pounding their chest, talking bad about China, talking bad about the Belt and Road, talking bad about Russia and Iran and all that, and they ain't going nowhere. Now, what does that say about the United States? This is very interesting. I've never seen the kind of situation before. The United States used to be feared. They're feared. Yeah, you damn straight we're feared. The CIA can knock you off. They can have private armies, mercenary armies. You can call them terrorists by night and mercenaries by day, paid for by the CIA or paid for by the whatever. But, you know, they can mess up your country. So, but it's not working. It didn't work in Syria, unfortunately, and it's not working in the Middle East anymore, and it's not going to work in Venezuela. So what does that mean? That means we're entering a different world, not the world that we were in. So I'm looking at a situation where at some point Trump is going to have to, you know, say to these guys, hey, you guys are not, you know, very competent. It's time for you to move on. And I'm looking at it. I'm looking at that coming up. But otherwise, Trump is not in control. He's not in control of the situation at home. The only thing he has is the American people. But the American people don't understand what I'm telling you. They're confused about the neocons. You know, there's this anti-Muslim thing going on in the U.S., which is being set up, you know, into gang counter gang, which completely obscures the issue. It's the British who are running this whole thing. And Trump's tweet did have hit a nerve in the British press, huge nerve in the British press. And oh my God, you know, and you can imagine what they said. It was, you know, it's paranoia and whatever, you know, blah blah blah. But Trump's message, no doubt, hits home. So we're 2.5 years in. Well, we're 2 years and a few months into the first term, and you have electionitis emerging, and you got this old guy, Bernie Sanders. He says the same thing every time, with the same cadence and the same voice. And he has the most popularity of all the candidates. But there's a new guy coming in who the powers that be have decided to build up. And he is the only puppy dog running for president. You know, feel-good puppy dog. That's Beto O'Rourke. A feel-good puppy dog. So now we got the feel-good puppy dog running for president. And everyone's going gaga, 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 and so we may have a feel-good puppy dog running for president. Who knows where that's going to go? But the reality is that none of these candidates represent any reality. That's the reality. None of these candidates represent any reality. So that's where we are. So we're expecting between now, the end of March, and the beginning of June, going through April into May, to be the most earth-shattering developments around the Belt and Road. Now, why is the Belt and Road so important? Because it establishes the means by which you connect one country to another, by which you connect continents to each other. If you look at Europe, you have the Pyrenees, you have the Alps, you have the mountains in Eastern Europe. You have to penetrate. You have to go around them, and penetrate and go around them. You have to have corridors, and then those corridors have to go through Central Asia, etc., and Russia over the vast to connect up. And what you're doing is creating space. You're creating space. You're creating economic space. You're taking one small area and integrating it into a much larger economic space. Okay, and what that does is you speed up the time it takes to get anywhere. You speed up the production process. You speed up the consumption process. You create an incredible explosion of wealth provided you bring in manufacturing and so on and so on. But you can't bring in manufacturing. You can't bring in you can't increase your agriculture if you don't have a way to put it into a market, to put it somewhere, to get it somewhere. So everything gets speeded up, and this is a global transformation that's going on. It's something that the Lyndon LaRouche is being credited with publicly by the former economics minister of Italy, Giulio Tremonti. So this is the LaRouche policy adopted by China, but it's still LaRouche.